Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I just finished going over a series of about 6 videos on the fundamentals of HTML and HTML5. Now I'm going to switch gears and go over the same kind of thing, but for cascading style sheets or CSS. In this video, I want to explain what I'm going over, plus I want to give you an example of each type of CSS that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to talk about inline CSS, internal CSS, external CSS, classes and IDs. We'll go into the topic of divs, how to work with colors in CSS, how to float, left, float, right, and turn off floating, positioning such as relative, absolute positioning, etc. Working with margins, and again distinguishing between margins and padding, adding borders, playing with fonts, styling text, aligning text, left, right, center, justified, etc. Styling links, we've already seen that. Talk about other places you can go to get information on CSS. Then get into the advanced selectors. This last stuff that you see here, that's down near the bottom, that's now in gray, that's more CSS3. But we'll talk about all of those. Once we get finished, we'll go over to the CSS reference on W3 Schools and make sure we didn't forget anything. But this is a humongous reference. All right, so that either if I go over all of these, that means that last lecture won't be a lecture, it'll be several lectures. So we'll see what happens as we go on. But to begin with, I've gone back to my file, which is now, after all this, is almost 700 or 600 lines long. And now, the first thing I'm going to do in here is to talk about inline CSS. All right? And we'll just put a comment there that says for specific element or elements. Take a look at what we're doing here. This should say, if it works correctly, my mother has blue eyes, and the word blue should be in blue. This one should say once upon a time, but the O in once should be 3 times the size of this. So how are we doing this? Well, when you use inline CSS, that means that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change something within a line or within a paragraph or whatever. All right, I believe, now I could be wrong on this, but I'm going to try this anyway. With the examples that I'm showing you, with those examples, this is just changing a word or a letter or something, but I believe I see no reason why I couldn't do this. And I'm going to put here, am I a blue paragraph? Now, I may have done something wrong stylistically there. I don't know. So I'm going to check it in just a moment. In fact, I'm going to actually do this. Now you can really see what's going on here. So let's run this. And you'll notice, am I a blue paragraph? Yes, I am. So what did I do right here? I used a span tag, which with inline CSS is the way it's typically done. And in that span tag, I said, I'm going to have a blue font color. So within that span tag, I put the text for my paragraph tag. I've separated out my paragraph tag from my span tag. My span tags are embedded within my paragraph tags. And as you know, I could change this to red. All right, so I could say style color equal red. I think I can put multiple styles in here too. Font, weight, bold. So am I a bold red paragraph? Let's see. And yes, I am. And if you say, well, I can't tell if that's bold or not, well, then we come back in here and we remove the font weight bold. And we run it again, and now you see that it's a bold, it's a red paragraph, but it's not a bold paragraph. All right, so again, when you work with inline CSS, it's for specific elements on a page. So that was the first one. With this second one here, now notice that we're just taking the word blue. We're surrounding the word blue in a span tag, where we're saying color blue, which means, again, we want, in this case, we want the font color in here to be blue. We could, again, also add something like font weight bold if we wanted to do that. Now, not only should it be blue, but it should be blue and bold, and it is. Finally, in the last example that you see right here, the O in Once Upon a Time, you see that kind of thing in kids' books and whatever. All right, that's this one. Now it's just a letter. That letter, we're saying take the font size and make it 3M, which is what? 3 times the size that it normally would be. Now, if I look at this, you can see it says Once Upon a Time. I just said to add bolding, and you can see it's now bolded. So again, the idea is, and I put it in here as instead of putting it in here as a comment, let's put it in as an H1 tag. So again, what this one says, CSS inline examples for specific elements. And I showed you how you can change a whole paragraph, how you can change a word within a paragraph, how you can change a letter within a word within a paragraph. And there are other ways that this can be used as well. If you go out to HTML span tag, they will show you some examples. So that's the first one. All right, now I'm going to take all this stuff that I've just been working on, and I'm going to comment it out. And we're going to go into internal CSS. All right, so let me get rid of that. Make this an H1 tag. Now the first one was inline, so it's right in the code itself. The second one is internal. Affects current web page. Notice what it says. If this one works, this paragraph should have green text and a gold background. This paragraph should be in a large Arial font, bolded and italicized. Well, what made that happen? It's up above, but let me run it first and see if indeed it works. If this works, this paragraph should have green text and a gold background, and it does. This paragraph should be in a large Arial font, bolded and italicized, and it is. So how did I do that? What was the magic? What was the magic to make that happen? Well, the magic for internal CSS is you put it within style tags up in your head section. So notice I've got here, well, and also please notice, because the keywords, and I didn't mention them, and I should have, was remiss not to, that is ID equals, and that is class equals. When you have an ID, there can only be one of those on each page. So there can only be one ID equal Packers on this page. So what this says is anytime you have an ID of Packers, you make the font color green, you make the background color gold. Now I could flip these, and I could make this gold, and I could make this green. All right, or whatever way I wanted to. But this says this must have an ID of Packers. So when you find something with an ID of Packers, you set those things accordingly. Now, I just showed it by setting it within a paragraph, but you could have set it within a word or something else if you wanted to. All right? If I did it within a word, I'd have to use the span tag. So, when we looked at this, it was green text on a gold background. Now, gold text on a green background. So you see how it's changed. Now, sometimes when you do this, you need more than one on the same page. So when you say class equals, I can use this as many times as I want. So for instance, if I come through there and make another paragraph, how does this paragraph work or look? Well, since the class is big, bold, and italicized, like this one, it should be, see how big my file is getting. The font family should be Arial. The font size should be 2.5 times its regular size. It should be bolded, and it should be italicized. Now, I'm not sure, but font is a kind of a different type of animal. So what I'm going to try here is I'm going to see if I can combine all this into a single statement. So I'm going to say font, colon, Arial, comma, 2.5 M, comma, bold, comma, italic. I don't know if the commas are necessary in there or not. I'll know real quick. Notice that still looks the same. But what I've done here is instead of putting this in as 4 lines, I said for the font family, Arial, so it knows that that's a family, 2.5 M, and it knows that's a size, bold, it knows that's a weight, and italic, it knows that's a style. So I can either do this as a single line, as I just did it, or I can do it as multiple lines, which is the way that I have been doing it. Now, you may disagree with what I'm about to say. You might want to use it as 4 lines as opposed to 1 as you're starting, because now you're sure you know exactly what's being set and how it is being set. All right? All right. The last type of CSS is what's known as external CSS. So let me take this and let me do that. All right. Now, external examples. I'm going to grab the same ones that I just had here for the internal. The Packers, the bold, etc. I'm going to grab those same ones. And I'm going to paste them in. And I've got to take this now. This will become CSS external examples. I like to say website wide, not webiste. Website wide changes. Because I can have these on multiple pages if I want to. Now it's the same stuff we had before, ID equal Packers, etc. All right. But I will now come in where I've got this stuff set, where I've got my internal CSS set. I'm going to take that and I'm going to comment all of that out. So that's now all commented out. So it shouldn't work, right? Well, let's look. Externally, it all worked. How does that look? I put an S there. So how did that work? Well, we'll look at it in just a second. Let's fix this first. Get rid of that S. You notice it's still saying ID equal Packers, class equal big, bold, italicized, and this one, class equal big, bold, italicized. But now what we're doing is, remember, we put this line in a long time ago. This will include our external style sheet. So we are doing what's called linking to our external style sheet. The relationship is it's a style sheet. And where is it? All right, it's under, and that's interesting that it worked, but it did work. It's under a file called style.css. Let's see if it still works. And it does. External examples, website-wide changes. If this works, this should have green text and a gold background. Well, I remember I reversed it. So now what that should have instead of green text with a gold background, it should have gold text with a green background. All right. Now, just to show this website-wide changes, I'm going to go back to my web page that's right here, and I'm going to save this. Do a save as, and I'm going to call this index2.html. Okay? And I'm going to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff here because this is way too big a page. So I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. Everything that's in my style tags. Makes it much easier to read now. All right, and I'm going to come down to my body. Start removing all this stuff. This is, again, stuff I did in earlier lectures. All right, now I'm down to a file of about 30 lines, which is a much better file to be able to work with. Don't need this right now. There you go. So I'm at 30 lines approximately. So now I'm using the same style.css This is index2.html. Am I still gold text and green background? Large Arial font, bolded and italicized. How do I look? Am I still gold? Well, I guess backwards. Large Arial font, how do I look? So I should change that. Am I still green text with a gold background? That's not what's important here, not at all. It's not correct, but the key thing, the reason that that is so important is when you take a look at it, that was using the same external style sheet. So what does that look like? Surprise. All we did was we plucked out the exact same internal CSS that we put in, and we put it in its own file, and it is not, repeat, it is not within style tags. All right, so what you've seen examples of in this first video are inline CSS, where we changed a paragraph or a word or a letter, etc. And that's designed to work with elements on a web page, a paragraph, a word, a sentence, whatever. Then we went in and looked at internal CSS, and internal CSS is page-wide, and that's within style tags that are in the head section. And from there, we just finished going over external CSS, where we have an external file that ends with a .css extension, and that we have to bring in using our link tag. All right, so that finishes up this first lecture. So what I've done, again, is I've discussed inline, internal, and external. I've also introduced you to the idea of classes and divs. In the next chapter, classes and IDs, I should say, I want to go over divs, colors, floating, and positioning. I'm trying to break this up into manageable chunks. If I can do this next, then I'll go in the next one and probably do like to here. All right? And then we'll finish, maybe we'll even finish it up, and then we'll do a lecture on the CSS3. Again, the goal here is not to see how fast I can ram this stuff down your throat. The goal is to go through as much stuff as I think you can handle in one video. So I'll be back to talk about some more of this in just a couple minutes.